Marcus woke up early that Saturday with a grin on his face. He had been counting the days until today, planned to take his birthday money to the bank and deposit it himself. At 8 years old, he felt very grown up. He had folded each bill with care and put them in an envelope marked Marcus's savings. He bounced down the stairs 2 at a time, his sneakers thumping on each step. His mother, Angela, watched him with a gentle smile. She loved how proud he was of every dollar he had earned by doing chores and helping neighbors with small tasks. Angela checked the envelope one more time while Marcus hopped around the living room. She remembered how he had saved up by walking Mrs. Patel's dog every morning and by helping Mr. Lee carry groceries from his car. He even did extra chores at home, setting the table, watering the plants, and cleaning his room without being asked. All those small jobs added up to the money in his hand now. Angela felt grateful. She knew these lessons in work and saving would help him later in life. Still, she admired his joy in doing simple chores just to learn responsibility. They stepped outside into the soft light of early morning. The air smelled like fresh grass and warm bread from the bakery on the corner. Marcus bounced on his toes as he waited for the car to start. He pointed at the sky. "Look, Mom, no clouds today. It's perfect for my big day." Angela laughed and told him that sunny days were good for brave steps. She drove them through quiet streets, past neighbors hanging laundry and children riding bikes. Marcus waved to a friend on the sidewalk who waved back, curious about his dress clothes and neat hair. When they pulled up in front of Crestview Bank, Marcus's heart thumped fast. He had been inside many times, but never to make his own deposit. The building stood solid with tall glass windows and a clean stone entry. The door slid open with a soft whoosh. The lobby smelled of paper and polished wood. Sunlight spilled through the front windows onto shiny tile floors. A few people sat in chairs, reading newspapers or waiting for tellers. A janitor quietly swept the floor. Everything looked calm and orderly. Angela led Marcus by the hand toward the teller line. The counters stood in a gentle curve, each window marked by a bright blue line. Behind the glass, tellers worked at computers and spoke softly to customers. A red digital clock on the wall ticked quietly. Marcus's eyes moved from one corner of the room to another. He saw colorful posters advertising savings accounts and home loans. He noticed a stack of small pamphlets about teaching kids to save money. His chest puffed out with pride when he realized the bank cared about young savers like him. At the front counter, a polished nameplate read Susan Parker, branch manager. Susan stood up from a chair and straightened her blazer, had neat hair tied back, and wore a simple necklace that glinted under the lights. She looked up at Angela and offered a polite nod. "Good morning," she said in a calm voice. "How can we help you today?" Marcus's mother smiled back. "Good morning. This is my son, Marcus. He'd like to deposit his birthday money into his savings account." Susan's expression showed interest. She gestured toward the deposit slip and handed Angela a blue pen. Marcus placed his envelope carefully on the counter. He whispered, almost to himself, "I saved every dollar." Angela gave him a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. Susan watched Marcus with calm eyes, her lips curving into a small, encouraging smile. "Well done, Marcus," she said softly. "Get this counted and into your account." She pressed a button under the counter, and a small digital scale slid out. Angela placed the bills on the scale as Susan keyed in some numbers on her terminal. Marcus leaned forward, curious about the tiny red numbers that appeared on the screen. While Susan worked, Angela and Marcus chatted. Marcus described how he folded each bill neatly, lining them up to make the counting easier. Angela laughed when he said he even counted twice to be sure. Susan glanced up when she heard that and smiled at Marcus again. She picked up the counted bills and tapped them lightly, then nodded. "There," she said. She moved to fill out the deposit slip, writing in simple words, "Marcus Johnson, deposit, date." Marcus watched the pen move across the paper. He felt important and grown up, but the bank lobby was suddenly busy. A new customer came in with a briefcase, another with a coffee cup, and someone slipped a form under a teller's window. "Bones," rang softly. Susan paused, looking toward the far end of the room. She seemed distracted as she tucked the bills into an envelope and placed them in a deposit bin. Marcus noticed her eyebrows lift slightly. He tilted his head. Something in the air felt different, as if a small change had made the room heavier. Angela saw Susan's look and turned to follow her gaze. The lobby was full of people needing service. The clock ticked louder in Marcus's ears. He felt a flutter of unease. But then Susan took a deep breath and slid the deposit slip across the counter. "Here you go," she said to Angela. Her voice sounded a little tight now. Marcus blinked at her. He wanted to say thank you, but the words stuck in his throat. He shifted from one foot to the other, the excitement of the morning mingling with a new nervous feeling. Angela picked up the slip and read it quietly. She handed it to Marcus with a proud smile. "Your money is safe, son," she said. Marcus picked up the slip and nodded. "Thank you," he said in a small voice. Susan offered a quick smile, but did not say anything more. Marcus felt both, proud and a little confused. He wondered why Susan had paused and looked worried when the lobby filled up. He tried to remember the last thing he said. Was there something wrong? Angela gently took Marcus's hand again. "Let's go see Mr. Carter at the next window," she said, using his nickname for the bank teller who handled their family account. Susan watched them step away, her eyes following Marcus until he disappeared in the line of customers. Marcus felt his mother's hand squeeze his tight. He looked up at her. She gave him a reassuring nod. He realized that even grown-ups could feel nervous sometimes. But he also felt safe knowing his mother was with him. They moved to the next counter. Mr. Carter greeted them with a warm smile. Marcus felt his heart slow down as Mr. Carter rang up the deposit, counted quietly, then stamped the slip and handed them a small receipt. Marcus held the slip like a badge of honor. Angela patted his back. "You did great," she whispered. He grinned. The nervous feeling melted away, replaced by the happy glow of achievement. He had done what he came to do. As they left Susan's window behind, Marcus glanced back. He saw Susan standing by her desk, watching the lobby again. Angela saw it too. Marcus gave her a puzzled look. She softly said, "Some days are just busier than others, Marcus." "But you did just fine," Marcus nodded. In his mind, he replayed the whole visit. He stored each detail, the shiny tile, the blue pen, Susan's calm smile. He felt proud of himself, fanned ready for whatever would come next. Outside, the morning sun felt warmer on Marcus's face. He clutched the receipt in his hand as they walked back to the car. His mother opened the door for him. He slid inside with a quiet excitement. He could not wait to tell his friends how he had been to the bank all by himself. He sat back, smiling at the sky through the windshield. Today felt like the start of something new and grown up, and he was ready for it. Marcus felt a gentle tug on his sleeve as his mother guided him back to Susan's desk. He wanted one more look at the pen she had used to count his birthday money. "Can I hold it for a moment?" he asked quietly, eyes wide with pride. Angela smiled and nodded. Susan reached through the slot and handed him the sleek blue pen. Marcus held it gently, turning it over in his small hand. It felt smooth and heavy, as if it belonged to someone important. Marcus's hand wobbled as he admired the pen's cool metal. He traced the curve near the clip and giggled softly. He thought about showing it to his friends later. He imagined them all gathering around, their eyes shining as they heard how he deposited his own savings. He felt like a hero. But in that moment of wonder, he leaned too far over the counter. His elbow brushed the glass, then the pen. It teetered for a second on the edge and tumbled to the floor with a soft click. The sound of the pen hitting the tile made Marcus's heart skip. He knew he had made a small mistake. He reached down quickly, his knees brushing the hard floor, and picked the pen up with both hands.
Eyes.
He looked up at Susan, ready to hand it back. But Susan did not smile. Eyes widened, and her expression froze like a photograph. She crouched beside him, her gaze fixed on the pen in his hand. Marcus felt the space between them grow cold for a second. Susan's voice was tight when she asked, "Where did you get this?" Marcus blinked. "You gave it to me," he said softly, holding the pen out. His small hands trembled. Susan placed a finger on the pen and studied it. Her brow furrowed. Then she slowly withdrew her hand and stood. Instead of smiling, she nodded once, stiffly. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He didn't understand why things had shifted so suddenly. Angela moved closer. "Susan, it's just a pen he was holding," she said firmly. Her voice was calm, but Marcus could hear the edge of worry in it. Susan shook her head. "No, I'm sorry," she said. She took a step back. "I need to make sure we protect bank property." She pressed a button below the counter. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He glanced at his mother. She stared at Susan in surprise. Before Marcus or Angela could say more, Susan lifted the phone receiver. She spoke into it in a low voice. "Hello. There's a situation at the front desk and individuals suspected of taking bank property." She gave their location and hung up. Marcus froze, the pen still clutched in his hand. Angela's mouth dropped open. She stared at Susan as though she had seen a ghost. Marcus looked from Susan to the phone and back again. He felt tears rise in his eyes. Marcus's breath caught as he realized Susan was calling the police. He looked up at Angela, voice small. "I didn't steal it," he whispered. Angela dropped to her knees beside him. She took the pen gently from his hand and tucked it into her purse. "It's okay, baby," she said softly. "We'll sort this out." But Angela did not move away. She stayed close, her body blocking Susan and the desk. Behind them, other customers paused in the lobby. A woman in a red scarf put down her magazine. A man in a suit stopped adjusting his tie. Everyone turned to look at the tense scene at the front. The air felt heavy and strange. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Marcus heard it behind his ears, like the beating of his own heart. "Are you sure you need the police?" Angela asked, voice rising with shock. Susan held the receiver now at her side. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked at Angela. Without greeting her, "I have to follow bank policy," she said. "I can't let someone walk away with bank property." Angela's eyes filled with hurt. She swallowed. "This is my son, and he never would take anything that isn't his." A sharp click echoed in the lobby. The call was over. Susan replaced the receiver. She squared her shoulders and looked away. Marcus's bottom lip quivered. He felt small. And scared, he pressed his cheek to his mother's arm. Angela wrapped her arms around him. She could feel his body trembling. Time seemed to slow as they waited. Marcus felt every heartbeat. He thought about the pen and how he'd only wanted to hold it, to feel grown up. Now he was stuck in a place he loved, the bank lobby, that suddenly felt strange and cold. He folded his arms around himself. Switching his gaze from Susan to Angela, he tried to read his mother's face. Angela knelt and looked into Marcus's eyes. "Sweetheart, I know you didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "Stay calm for me, okay?" Marcus nodded slowly. His eyes filled with silent tears. He blinked to keep them back. Next to them, Susan tidied papers on the desk. She seemed to avoid looking at them now. Minutes passed like hours. Marcus counted the seconds in his head. He tried to think of something else, something happier, chocolate cupcake his grandmother baked, the last page of his favorite comic book, but his mind kept replaying Susan's phone call. Marcus felt like he had stepped into a story that he could not understand. Then, a low rumble of a siren sounded softly in the distance. Marcus's eyes widened. He looked at Angela, face pale. "Ow!" She held him tighter. The siren grew louder, then faded, crossing the street outside the bank. People in the lobby whispered. Marcus heard footsteps in the hall behind him. Squeezed. His eyes shut for a moment and opened them to see two officers in uniform. Walking toward them, Angela stayed on her knees beside Marcus. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her head. The officers approached with calm faces. Marcus peeked at them, his heart racing. He held Angela's hand. The officers stopped in front of them. One spoke quietly. "Ma'am, can we have a word?" Angela nodded, brushing her hair back. She looked at Marcus and smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. In that moment, Marcus realized that what had started as a small accident had turned into something far bigger. He felt the weight of misunderstanding landing on him like a heavy stone. He looked up at his mother, trusting that she knew what to do. As the officers stood before them, and the lobby fell silent once more, Marcus held Angela's hand and waited for what would happen next. The two officers stepped into the bank lobby with calm, steady strides. Their uniforms were crisp, badges shining on their chests, and their expressions were serious, but not harsh. The first officer, tall and broad-shouldered, gave a polite nod to Susan Parker, who lingered awkwardly by her desk. The second officer, slightly shorter and with gentle eyes, turned toward Marcus and his mother, Angela Johnson, and offered a small, reassuring smile. "Ma'am, sir," the tall officer began, using polite language despite the tense moment. "We received a call about possible property taken without permission. We need to ask a few questions." Angela stood and smoothed her jacket, herself between Marcus and the officers protectively, though her voice stayed calm. "Of course," she said, her words measured. "But I assure you, my son did nothing wrong." Marcus pressed his small hand into his mother's side. He felt the cool strength of her presence and took a steadying breath. His heart pounded, but he reminded himself to stay calm, just as Angela had told him. He glanced at Susan out of the corner of his eye. Susan avoided looking back. Her shoulders slumped as if she wished the floor would open beneath her. The officer with the gentle eyes knelt to Marcus's level. He spoke softly, so that only the boy and his mother could hear. "Hi there, Marcus," he said kindly. "I'm Officer Reynolds. Your mom tells me you didn't mean to take anything. Can you tell me what happened?" Marcus felt a flutter in his chest. He took a moment, then spoke in a small voice. "I just wanted to hold the pen," he said. "It was smooth and shiny. I leaned too far and it fell. I picked it up and held it because you gave it to me." Officer Reynolds nodded, listening. Closely, he glanced at his partner, who was speaking quietly with Susan. The lobby's other customers watched in silence, some turning back to their magazines or phones, others still curious. Marcus felt eyes on him, but focused on the officer's friendly face. The hard, cold fear that had gripped him eased slightly as he spoke. Angela crouched beside Marcus, hand resting on his shoulder. She added, "Susan gave him the pen for a moment so he could admire it. He was just being a curious child." She looked toward Susan. "Isn't that right?" Susan shifted uncomfortably. She nodded without meeting their eyes. I did," she admitted in a quiet voice. "I passed it through the counter so he could see how it felt. I didn't think anything of it until it fell." Officer Reynolds rose and wiped his hand on his uniform. He offered Marcus a kind smile. "Thank you for explaining, Marcus. I believe you." Then he turned to Angela. "Ma'am, can you show me the pen?" Angela reached into her purse and produced the pen, holding it gently by the clip. She presented it carefully to the officer, examined it under the bright bank lights. To any observer, it was just a regular bank pen, nothing unusual, no signs of tampering. The other officer approached Susan. He leaned in and asked for her side of the story. Susan spoke in a low tone. "I saw the boy drop it. I thought he might have taken it without permission, so I called it in. It was wrong. I shouldn't have assumed." The officer listened and nodded. Meanwhile, the tall officer cleared his throat and returned to Angela and Marcus. "Ms. Johnson, it looks like there was a misunderstanding," he said gently. "Your son didn't steal anything." Angela gave a small sigh of relief, though her cheeks were still pale. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I'm glad you see that." The officer offered a courteous nod. "We'll file this as a misunderstanding. No charges, no further action. I'm sorry you had to go through this." At that, Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. His shoulders relaxed, and he took a deep breath. He looked at the pen in his hand, and then up at his mother. She smiled and squeezed his shoulder. "You did great, Marcus," she whispered. For the first time in what felt like hours, he allowed himself a small smile in return. The officers stood to leave, offering polite nods to everyone. Officer Reynolds gave Marcus one last kind look. "Keep being curious, buddy," he said softly. "But maybe ask before you hold things next time, okay?" Marcus grinned. "Okay," he said. The tall officer nodded at Susan. "Be careful with assumptions," he added. They can cause a lot of trouble. Susan swallowed and gave a quick, remorseful nod. As the officers walked out, the bank lobby seemed to exhale. The tension that had filled the room drained away. Customers resumed their own business. Some whispered about what had happened. Others shook their heads, and a few returned to their reading. Susan stood behind her desk, eyes downcast, as she rearranged papers and pens. Angela watched her for a moment and then turned her gaze to Marcus. Marcus looked up at the colorful posters on the wall, the ones about saving money and the kids. Club flyer for young savers. He thought about how he had been so proud to deposit his savings, how excited he was to learn responsibility. Now he felt a mix of relief and confusion. Still loved the idea of saving, but he also knew that misunderstandings could hurt. Angela knelt and patted his knee. "Let's finish our day, sweetheart," she said. "We'll go get a treat, and then we'll go home." Marcus nodded. He nodded again. He felt the day's events settle around him like a heavy blanket, but he trusted his mother to lift it away. He buttoned his jacket and stood tall. They approached Susan's desk together. Susan looked up, her expression uncertain. Angela spoke. "First, Susan, my son loves this bank most of all because of the friendly people here. Today was hard, but I hope we can move forward." Susan's eyes welled with tears. She took a breath and then nodded. "Angela, I am so sorry. Let fear guide me, and I hurt you and your son. I will do better." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a new pen, identical to the one Marcus had dropped. "Please accept this," she said. "It's yours to keep, as a gift and as an apology." Marcus took the pen, his small fingers trembling. It felt the same as the other, but in that moment it also felt like hope. He looked up at Susan and managed a gentle smile. "Thank you," he said softly. Angela smiled at Susan too, her warmth returning. "Thank you," she echoed. "That means a lot." With the pen safe in Marcus's pocket, Angela and Marcus turned toward the exit. The morning sun streamed through the bank's windows, brighter now, as if the world had cleared. As they walked away, Angela held Marcus's hand tightly. Marcus steered clear of the door this time, not wanting to lean. On it, he felt proud that he had stayed calm and spoken the truth. Outside, the air felt fresh. Birds chirped in the trees lining the street. The bakery's windows glowed invitingly, and the scent of fresh bread drifted over. Marcus looked at his mother. "Can we go get a chocolate croissant?" he asked. Angela laughed softly. "Of course," she said. "You earned it today." Marcus smiled, his worries melting away. He realized that one mistake or misunderstanding could be powerful, but so could kindness, honesty, and forgiveness. They walked down the sidewalk, past the quiet homes and trees. Marcus carried his receipt, and the new pen, like a treasure. Angela thought about how this day would become a memory he would carry into adulthood, a lesson about respect, responsibility, and the courage to speak up. As they turned the corner toward the bakery, Marcus skipped ahead, his laughter ringing through the morning air, and Angela followed, grateful that they had faced fear together and come out stronger on the other side. Angela stepped away from the counter, her mind racing. She needed a moment to think. She walked past the rows of chairs where other customers still sat, their eyes following her as she moved. Marcus stayed by the counter with the two officers, his small frame rigid with worry. Susan Parker continued to stand behind her desk, her gaze fixed on the floor. Angela walked out the front door without a word. Outside, the air felt cooler. She closed her eyes for a brief second and took a deep breath. A black SUV waited at the curb, engine running quietly. Angela had called her assistant on her cell phone asking for backup. Now she stood before the vehicle, dressed in the same simple blouse and slacks she had worn that morning. But she felt the power she carried every day. The power Susan did not yet know she held. The SUV door opened, and her assistant stepped out. He wore a crisp suit and held a tablet in his hand. He glanced at Angela and nodded. Behind him, two more. Black cars rolled up. A small team of professional drivers and aides emerged. They closed ranks around Angela, forming a protective circle. People on the street paused, staring at the sudden arrival of official-looking cars and men in suits. Angela lifted her head and looked at the bank's glass doors. Inside, she could still see Marcus standing with the officers. He looked confused, but brave. His mother knew she had to act quickly. She straightened her jacket and walked back toward the entrance. Her heels clicked on the sidewalk, a steady, confident sound that echoed softly. Inside the lobby, Susan Parker looked up at the noise. She saw Angela return, flanked by her team. The tall officers turned, surprised by the new arrivals. The bank's customers watched as Angela strode toward the group near the counter. Her assistant and aides fell in step behind her, opening a path. The air in the bank felt heavy, charged with new energy. Angela stopped a few feet from Marcus and the officers. She met their eyes calmly. "Officers," she said in a clear voice, "I'm Angela Johnson." The officers paused, nodding, and she added, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need you to stand down." Her tone was gentle, but firm. Officer Reynolds responded politely, "Ma'am, we were just clearing up a misunderstanding." Angela smiled slightly. "This is my son," she said, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "He did nothing wrong, and you may leave now." Officers stepped back in unison. The tall officer at Susan's side looked at Angela with respect. "Yes, ma'am," he said. He nodded to his partner, and they turned away. They walked toward the exit, their radios clicking softly. Marcus watched them go, relief shining in his eyes. He looked up at his mother. She knelt beside him and gave him a quick hug. Susan stood frozen by her desk. Her mouth parted slightly. She stepped forward, voice trembling. "Angela, I am so sorry. I didn't know you were her mother, or her mother in the company." Angela looked at Susan, her expression kind yet serious. "Susan," she said, "I am not just a mother here. I am the CEO of Johnson Tech. My company is one of your bank's biggest clients." Susan's face went pale. A murmur spread through the lobby. Bank customers whispered among themselves. Some shook their heads. Others exchanged glances. A few approached to stand behind Susan, offering timid support. Angela stayed calm. She stood and faced Susan directly. "I trust you understand now why I asked the officers to leave," she said softly. Susan nodded slowly, blinking away embarrassment. "Yes," she whispered. "I let my fear guide me. I am ashamed." Angela nodded. "Fear can make us do wrong things," she said, "but it can also teach us to do better." She turned to the officers who had paused at the door. They stood respectfully, waiting to see what would happen. Angela raised her hand slightly. "Thank you," she said, and the officers nodded again, then left the building. The bank doors closed behind them with a soft whoosh. Silence filled the lobby. Then Angela turned back to Susan. "This bank values respect and trust," she continued. "I hope today you will help your staff learn to see people first as people, not as threats." Customers nodded or whispered agreement. Susan wiped her forehead and offered a shaky smile. "Yes, Ms. Johnson," she said. "We will begin training right away. I promise to do better." Angela smiled and placed a gentle hand on Susan's arm. "Thank you," she said. Then she looked down at Marcus. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" Marcus nodded, eyes bright. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the new pen he had been given after the misunderstanding. He held it up shyly. Angela tousled his hair. "You were very brave today," she said. Marcus beamed. He climbed onto a chair beside Susan's desk. He looked at her and said, "I just wanted to hold a pen. It was shiny." "Oh." Susan's eyes filled. With tears, she leaned down and whispered to Marcus, "I'm sorry I scared you." Marcus shook his head. He held out the pen to Susan. "It's okay," he said. "You can have this one back." Susan shook her head. "No," she said. "This one is yours. I want you to have it." Angela smiled warmly at her son. "You, Susan," she said again. "This means a lot." Marcus climbed down and took his mother's hand. The lobby felt lighter now, as if a weight had lifted. Customers returned to their seats, and the bank staff exchanged relieved smiles. Angela turned to leave. She gave Susan a nod and a small wave. Then she walked toward the exit with Marcus beside her. Her assistant and the team waited just outside the door. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, sunlight flooded the lobby through the tall glass windows. Angela stopped and looked back at the building. She felt relief and pride. Her son had faced fear and come through it with honesty and courage. On the walk to the car, Marcus chatted excitedly about what had happened. He told his mother how he had felt when the officers arrived and how proud he was that she had come to help him. Angela listened, smiling and nodding. She reached down and squeezed his hand. "You did well, Marcus," she said. "Truth and calm can fix many things." They climbed into the SUV, and the driver closed the door softly. The engine started, and they pulled away from the bank. Angela looked out the window at the building getting smaller behind them. She thought about how one small act of bias had almost hurt her son. But she also thought about how speaking up and using her voice had made things right. Marcus leaned against the seat, the pen safely in his pocket, as they drove down the quiet street. Angela knew this day would stay with Marcus. She hoped it would teach him to be brave, honest, and kind. And she knew she would work to make sure no child at her bank would ever feel afraid again. Marcus walked off the steps of Crestview Bank with his mother by his side. The sun shone warmly on his face, and the breeze felt soft on his skin. He clutched the small pen in his pocket, the one Susan had gifted him as an apology. Felt light, as if he had just run a race and won. Angela glanced at him and smiled. "Ready to go home?" she asked. Marcus nodded, his eyes bright with relief and pride. He had faced something scary today, but he had stayed calm and honest. And now, the world felt safe again. As they crossed the parking lot, a reporter with a notepad stopped them. She approached carefully, offering a polite smile. "It's Johnson," she said gently. "May I ask you a few questions about today's events?" Angela paused and glanced at Marcus. He gripped her hand but looked curious. Angela knelt down to his level. "Are you okay with me talking for a minute?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded. He trusted his mother. Angela stood and faced the reporter. She spoke calmly, telling the story in clear, simple words. She explained how Marcus had only wanted to hold a pen, how Susan had misunderstood, and how she had arrived to clear things up. Reporter listened and jotted down notes. Marcus watched from his mother's side, feeling like his small act of courage had mattered. That afternoon, Crestview Bank's public relations team released an official statement. They apologized for the misunderstanding and announced new training for all staff to recognize unconscious bias. They said they would welcome community members to participate in workshops on respect and inclusion. The statement ended by thanking Marcus for teaching everyone a lesson in calm honesty. When Angela read the statement to Marcus, his chest swelled with pride. He whispered, "They said my name." Angela hugged him gently. "Yes, sweetheart. You helped make things better for everyone." In the days that followed, Susan Parker found herself thinking about the incident often. She replayed the mornings, events in her mind, and felt deep regret for her fear-driven actions. She opened her office door to find a letter addressed to her. It was from the bank's headquarters, an invitation to lead the new BIOS awareness training program. Susan's first reaction was shock. She thought, "Me." But then she remembered Marcus's brave eyes, the way he spoke his truth so clearly. She realized this was her chance to learn and to help others do the same. She wrote back, accepting the invitation, determined to turn her mistake into an opportunity for growth. At home, Marcus took out the pen whenever he felt proud or curious. He clicked it gently and watched the tip glide out, then clicked it back in. It became his lucky pen. He used it to write thank you notes to his teachers, to draw small pictures in his sketchbook, and even to practice his cursive letters. Each time he saw the bank's logo on its side, he remembered the warm spring morning, the soft tile floor, and the moment when he stood tall under the watchful eyes of the officers. He learned that even small moments could change big things. One weekend, Angela took Marcus back to the bank. She had called ahead and told Susan they might visit just to say hello. Marcus felt a flutter of nerves as he approached the glass doors. Again, he remembered the fear and the confusion. But he also remembered his mother's calm voice and the way everyone had listened to him. He held Angela's hand and walked inside. Susan greeted them with a warm smile. She knelt beside Marcus and gave him a small box wrapped in bright paper. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said. "What in this box is something special?" Marcus opened it carefully. Inside lay a new piggy bank, painted bright blue with gold letters spelling out his name. He gasped. "It's for my savings," he exclaimed. Susan nodded. "Yes," she replied. "I want you to keep saving and learning. And every time you see this piggy bank, I hope you remember that your voice matters." Marcus grinned and hugged Susan. She returned the hug gently. Angela watched them with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Susan," she said softly. "This means a lot to us." Susan smiled, her eyes shining. "No, thank you," she replied. "You both taught me something very important." After that day, Susan met with her staff and shared Rachel's story and details of Marcus's courage. She admitted her mistake, talked about bias, and listened. As employees shared their own experiences, together, they organized quarterly workshops where local families and community leaders spoke about respect and understanding. The bank lobby got new posters, kind words, daily reminders to see each other as people first. Marcus's story even became a gentle training video played for new hires. Susan introduced it with a personal note. "This is the day I learned to see children as children, not as problems." At school, Marcus told his classmates about his big day. Some of them gasped. Others shook their heads in disbelief that a simple trip to the bank could turn into such a lesson. His teacher praised him for his calm words and honest courage. She invited him to speak briefly during a school assembly about truth and respect. Marcus stood before his classmates, pen in hand, and shared what had happened. He said, "It all started with a pen. But words and feelings matter more than anything. If we speak up calmly and honestly, we can make things right." His classmates clapped, and many nodded in agreement. Life went on with its usual rhythms: homework, weekend soccer games, visits to grandparents. But under the surface, things had shifted. Angela noticed herself smiling more when she passed the bank's glass doors. She felt proud that Marcus's story had helped create positive change. She knew he would carry this lesson into adulthood. That bias can hurt, but truth and calm can heal. One evening, as Marcus drifted to sleep, he held his lucky pen and thought about Susan, the officers, and his mother's calm strength. He felt sleepy, but happy. He whispered to himself, "I did good today." In his dreams, he floated through a bright room filled with people listening carefully, asking questions, and learning from one another. He dreamed of a world where every child was seen first as a child, and every simple act of kindness could change someone's day. The next morning, Angela gave Marcus a gentle wake-up tap. "Time to get ready for school," she said. Marcus stretched and reached for his pen. He clicked it once, then tucked it into his backpack along with his notes for a big history project. He hugged his mother and ran down the stairs, excitement in his steps. As he left the house, he looked back and saw Angela at the front door, watching him go. She waved and he waved back. That day, Creedview Bank finalized its new policy. Managers would no longer judge by first impressions. They would treat every visitor with fairness and kindness. And every time a teller offered a pen, they would think twice and perhaps hand it over with a smile and a clear invitation. Susan led the first official training session, starting with Marcus's story and ending with an open discussion among all employees. Many of them thanked her for her honesty and for giving them a chance to learn. Months later, Marcus returned to the bank with his grandmother. This time, he visited the kids' club counter in the corner. He placed his savings in an orange envelope and was greeted by a new teller who handed him a golden certificate for Best Young Saver. Marcus beamed. He handed the pen to the teller for a moment, but the teller simply said, "Of course, here you go," and offered it back. With a smile, Marcus clicked the pen once, then wrote his name on the certificate neatly. With his practiced CURSIVE, as he left the bank, certificate in one hand and pen in the other, he thought about how much had changed since that first day. A simple slip of a pen, a quick assumption, and a call to the police had led to apologies training, and new friendships. He understood that mistakes happen, but so do second chances. And he knew that one small voice, spoken clearly and calmly, could help a whole bank see the world in a kinder light. Walking home, Marcus felt proud of every small step saving money. Speaking his truth and trusting his mother, he held the pen tightly and looked up at the sky. It was the same bright blue as his new piggy bank. And he thought, one day I will help people learn even more. But for now, he was 8 years old. With a head full of dreams, a pen in his pocket, and a heart ready to make the world better, one kind word at a time.